It just never stops. It never stops with this administration. I swear to God, I don't know how people used to do my job when there was just like a normal president, like that does it. Because like it's not even specifically a Trump thing, right? Because you guys met me during the Biden years, and it did feel like we had something new to talk about every single day, but it was just different. It was a different feeling relative to what we've been used to dealing with. In previous administrations here. Before we get into the news, I do want to share a little bit about my own personal life here. I went to an event on Saturday down in Milwaukee with the Wisconsin Labor History Society, seeing as May Day has just come and gone. And obviously, unions on the forefront of a lot of people's minds here. Unions always on my mind. I think it's a very important way for us to kind of take back um a lot of the workers' power that I feel like has been stripped from the workforce over the course of the last 50 years or so, and especially over the course of the last 6 or 7 years. Really excited to have gone to that event. Lots of good people, lots of good ideas, lots of excitement surrounding the idea of organizing and why, whether you're in a union job or a non-union job, the importance of unions and not taking for granted where we are as a workforce today, with still having plenty more room to grow relative to what existed prior to the advent of unions. And I have to say, and we didn't get into this on Saturday, but it's a thing I've been noticing for a while that's kind of hard to avoid. But it is kind of uncanny how much the 20s have been following the 20s of the 1920s, right? Starting the 1920s with a pandemic, the Spanish flu, kind of resetting a lot of people in the nation and around the country. Record levels at the time of wealth inequality, giant tax cuts for the people that were experiencing the largest amounts of wealth, all culminating in a massive collapse at the end of the decade. Hopefully, that part doesn't actually end up coming to fruition here, but the rest of it is seems to be a bit concerning for a lot of people, and this should be, at the very least, should be concerning. Part of that 1920s collapse of the economy and then eventually rebuilding is impossible to tell without talking about the importance of unions and how people joining unions, creating unions, and pushing back against workforces ultimately bore out the reversal of the Gilded Era, of wealth inequality of the late 1800s and early 1900s. Unions were an important part of that story, and they'll be an important part of this story again this time around. And what's interesting is the excitement surrounding unions, the support surrounding unions is hitting record highs again relative to the pre-Reagan era of how people used to feel about unions. But the membership isn't matching that kind of excitement. Less than 10% of people identify as being part of a union right now. And as I've stated 1,000 times over, I currently am not working at a union operation. I have been a part of union operations, I have been a part of the unionization process. But as I oftentimes like to highlight, unions are only necessary when businesses are run poorly. Without acknowledging that, it's kind of difficult to understand why it is that people would want to join them to begin with. I'm coming from a radio station that is not run well. I'm currently working at one that is. And that's kind of a major difference here. But by and large, a lot of people don't find themselves as unionized, despite the fact that most jobs don't pay a living wage. And most jobs don't respect the workers that are working at those places, whether that be at an Amazon or a Walmart or whatever the situation is. Um, I actually heard a really interesting story that I'll keep to myself, but I'll let you fill in the blanks about Walmart and union workers and how they don't even let construction unions on their premises because they don't want the workers getting any bright ideas. Um, but nevertheless, an important conversation. I was not a speaker at this event. I went as a participant, and I'm very happy that I did, even on a Saturday for the entirety of my day, because it really goes to show you how many people are really working behind the scenes here in Wisconsin, what they're trying to accomplish. And they really did, in my opinion, a good job of kind of highlighting the overlap between politics and unionization, and what goes into unionizing and organizing a workplace, and what goes into organizing a political party, whether it be one of the established duopoly parties or one of these third parties trying to get up and off the ground here. It shows you what kind of things have to go on behind the scenes, how you have to talk to people. We have 1,000 conversations on this show regarding union strength, but we never really talk about the ins and outs of it. Like, I remember sitting in union meetings and our program director at the time pounding the desk, screaming, "You sit the bleep down and you shut the bleep up," because we had the audacity to say, hey, maybe our spouses could be included on our healthcare benefits. Hey, maybe this job that requires a college degree could pay more than $8 an hour. Not a lot more, mind you, just more than $8 an hour. These were all valid conversations that were being had at the time and met with outright aggression. And you see the way political parties address anytime somebody tries to run as a third party member or coming from the third party, and you begin to realize very quickly um, just how quickly the smiles go away and it becomes anger and frustration. And just kind of reliving my own experiences with it and watching other people talk about it, it really was a fascinating conversation. So I'm happy that I went and got a chance to meet so many people. A couple of outside the box fans down there in Milwaukee, which is absolutely awesome to see happen as well. But yeah, I at least wanted to share that, as May is kind of a focus on labor, with May Day kind of starting the month, and obviously this show being what it is. I at least wanted to start the conversation off there. So thank you to all the parties involved that show up on Saturday, and I'm sure it won't be the last time I go to something like that. And a shout out to everybody joining me on the HBY text line, as well as through YouTube and TikTok as well. Here I see Metal Rosie saying that I'm a company man today, Metal Rosie. I'm wearing my WHBY polo, self-branded polo. You know me, big time company guy. That's what everyone here describes me as. If you haven't seen me wearing my employee owner shirt a couple weeks ago, it's just the kind of stuff that I do. Yeah, but so I see Fancy Ben is back, is in the text line. Nah, this isn't fancy. This isn't fancy Ben. This is industrial Ben. We've got a lot to talk about, though. And I see Justin hit me up in the text line. And this kind of highlights, he says, in regards to my opening comments, the Biden years were like a mosquito inside the tent while you're trying to sleep. The Trump years are a bear outside of the tent while you're trying to sleep. And that actually is a fantastic metaphor that I absolutely wouldn't have thought of on my own. But I think that's a very real assessment. At least that's my interpretation of it, because we've been watching the economic situation that we have been dealing with worsen with a regular degree, specifically over the last 2 months since the unilateral move to start a pointless war that nobody was asking for. But realistically, we've been on this track for most of the Trump years. And as much as Biden sucked, as much as Biden wasn't willing to crack down on the elements of corporate greed that I think were holding us back as a society, not only has the Trump administration showed no interest in cracking down on those, but they have only exacerbated the matter. Have you guys been following along with this Trump shoe conversation? Now, this isn't the type of stuff that I like to do on this show, because I believe corruption is universal. I believe this president is uniquely corrupt. I believe that what the Trump administration is disgustingly and overtly corrupt in a way that I almost find liberating, that I never have to pretend to take a conservative's thoughts on corruption seriously ever again, because they don't have a single thing to say about this administration is all, but they're licking their chops to complain about some random woman at a random nonprofit because it fits whatever narrative they have. And I'm so thankful that I can just kind of ignore all of that, just based on the way that this presidency has been operating here. But this shoe one is absolutely remarkable, and allow me to explain why. Because similarly, this is not, if you want to be dumb, excuse me, not shoes, I meant phones, the phone controversy. If you want to be dumb, it is not my place to tell you to not be dumb. You're going to live your life. And if you want to waste your money in ways that are obviously wasteful, I cannot stop you. It's kind of like the idea of legalizing gambling nationwide. That gives me heart palpitations because, as somebody that gambles and knows how easily you can kind of lose yourself in that, I think there's going to be a lot of people in society that end up losing their funds in very stupid ways. And as a show that does that regularly discusses the importance of a social safety net and making sure that all populations in this country are taken care of, it's kind of hard to get that point across when people are losing their money betting the over or something like that. You know what I mean? And the Trump phone conversation is something very similar as well. 600,000 Americans decided that they were going to pre-order a $600 gold phone that is a Trump phone. Right on. These people buy a bunch of Trump stuff. Is it stupid? Yep. But far be it for me to tell people what kind of stupid stuff they're going to spend their money on. I own a claw machine that I filled with beer during my college years because I was stupid with my money. And you're allowed to be stupid with your money, especially in your youth. All right. That's a part of the conversation. That's part of growing up. Far be it for me to tell you how to spend your money. It's the common pattern that we see stemming from this one individual that, like, not to beat down an overly used cliche, but how many times are you guys really going to try and kick that football before you realize they're never going to leave the football on the ground for you to kick it? The delivery for this phone has slipped repeatedly. You know what else has slipped repeatedly? The release date for Grand Theft Auto 6. The difference is Grand Theft Auto 6 has been a decades-long effort with hundreds of people trying to create a very in-depth system. There's rumors that $1 billion have been spent on this game, and they keep delaying it. And allegedly, it's actually going to come out in November of this year. I'll believe it when I see it. But that is in no way comparable to this new phone operation. It was supposed to come out in late summer of 2025, then November/December of 25, then Q1 of 26. And now, as of today, as of the recording of this show, 9/21 on May 11th, 2026, it has officially been removed entirely from the website. You're getting a number of different explanations talking about certifications of delay to 43 government shutdown, which even the people that bought the phone know that the government shutdown is a BS excuse because this is an entirely private operation. People are very frustrated, finally, with the efforts to buy this thing. Looks like they're never getting it. And the craziest part is that the contract that they signed when giving over the $100 for their phone explicitly states that they may never receive anything for the money that they gave this man, this president of a country, from what I am being told. We'll see what happens. But this story's wild to me because, again, it wouldn't tick me off as much as it does. This would just be another comical story, right? Be like, man, when are people going to stop falling for this stuff? These people paid how much for Trump branded paper straws? $15. Well, that sounds pretty dumb, but live your life. Not my life. You guys can spend money however you see fit. The reason it gets so frustrating to me is that these are the same people that don't shut the hell up about Hunter Biden's laptop for 4 years. They will take one fairly obvious corruption story and complain about it for 4 years, going as far as saying it's one of the main reasons why they are voting for Donald Trump. And then this is just like a random Saturday story. And by Wednesday, nobody's going to give a crap that the sitting president of a country decided to start a phone company, trick 600,000 people into buying the phones, and then give nobody the phones. And by halfway through the week, that story is going to be like I'm not even sure that happened kind of story, because we will move on to some other high-level corruption story. Again, I have evolved beyond corruption because it's just so prevalent in politics that inevitably it's going to drive me nuts trying to cover all of it. So I am just accepting the corruption and pushing for positive stuff to happen outside of the corruption. But if you were one of the Hunter Biden people, if you were one of the Hillary's laptop people, and you are not perpetually hanging on to just this phone story, let alone the crypto rug pull, let alone the gold Trump shoe story, let alone the Board of Peace story, let alone the suing the government and paying yourself $10 billion of taxpayer dollars because of some way that you believe your rights were infringed on 6 years ago, let alone any of that. None of that hits your radar. But once the Democrats seize and take back the House and Senate in November, and in all likelihood the presidency in 28, something tells me you're very quickly going to remember just how anti-corruption you are. And I'm here to tell you right now that outside the box will not be a safe space for you to complain about it. 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. We got our first caller of the day. Anybody else wants to chime in? There's the numbers. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Amen to what you just said, Ben. Anyway, I wanted to go back to Walmart. I have talked to a couple of people who drive semis or have their husbands drive semis for Walmart, and apparently the semi drivers are treated like gold. Why can't they do that with all the rest of their employees?
I agree. I mean, I think it's very clear to me that they kind of have a hierarchy, because to drive those trucks, you actually need a little bit of training, whereas working in the store itself, teenagers can do it. You have people across the spectrum. You have retirees doing it, and I think they very much take the attitude that you're a replaceable cog in a machine, and that's kind of how they treat you while you're working there. You know what's crazy, Cindy, is I worked as a producer, and that's the way producers were treated, standing next to on-air talent. It was the talent who was completely irreplaceable. Meanwhile, if the on-air people had a heart attack, the producer could start talking on the air, but if the producer had a heart attack, the host had no idea how to work the boards. So you tell me who was more popular. So I'm right there with you, but I don't think there's any way that we're going to be able to get these people to respect it outside of union respect, you know?
Yep.
All right. Hey, thanks for the call. Nice seeing you at the event, Cindy. It's always nice seeing listeners kind of pop up there. So thanks for being there. You take it easy. Cindy was at the Labor History Society event that I was at on Saturday, which is always a pleasant surprise. What's funny is I didn't even know that it was her, but I heard her start talking, and that's how I know all you guys is by your voice. So when I heard a recognizable voice, I was like, oh, get out of here. Is that Cindy? And sure enough. Kathleen says the grift is tragically laughable. I mean, that's the best way to describe it, because it is tragic. Like, I don't want these people to be conned. I don't care that they're being conned, but at this point, I genuinely believe giving Donald Trump or anybody affiliated with him any of your money is the equivalent of putting your money in a brown paper bag and then throwing it off a cliff. It has no actual guarantee. And at this point, much like with Elon Musk, when I see Elon Musk say a thing, I'm like, all right, there's a more than 2/3 chance that he's probably lying about that, and the opposite of what he's saying is actually true. I have now hit a point where when Trump has one of these giveaways, I think it's even higher than 2/3, to be frank with you, but I just assume that eventually we're going to find out that what everybody was paying for ultimately didn't end up getting delivered. Or like Steve Bannon taking donations for the wall. Now tax dollars are going to build a ballroom that nobody was asking for. And the list goes on and on. The economy is trending in the wrong direction. Another forever war is starting, despite the fact the entire campaign was based on the idea that no forever wars were going to start. I think it's fair to say that at this point of the presidency, outside of the cruelty exhibited towards non-U.S. citizens and the fact that Democrats are angry about something new every day, I don't know that Trump voters are getting a single thing that they voted for outside of those two things, because I struggle to find any examples of these things trending in a positive direction. I defy somebody else to tell me that I'm wrong here. 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. I welcome any and all thoughts on the matter. We're going to throw to a commercial break here. When we come back, if you guys want to keep talking about this, I'm happy to do so, but I want to get into the mainline conversation of the day. Virginia's gerrymandering effort looks like it's hit an impasse, although no guarantees that this is going to be where the final resting point is or not. When are we going to get to the point when these elections are actually about ideas again? I recognize not playing with an arm tied behind your back. I recognize they go low, we go lower, yada, yada, yada. When is it going to actually be about the ideas and not just trying to find a way to cheat yourself into the seats, because nothing positive is taking place right now? That's going to be the theme of the second half hour, and I'm sure you guys will have some thoughts about it. We'll be back in just a little bit. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. Herb out in Nina says there's a sucker born every minute, PT Barnum. I will say, as somebody that used to do door to door sales, the percentage of people that will sign up for something when you meet them at their door is obscene. Um, I don't even know if I should say this, but like there's an element. The older I get in life, the more it seems that there's a ton of industries out there that are exclusively designed to exploit stupidity. And then when you see the efforts to make us dumber, um, and then you see how much of specifically the sales industry is designed around exploiting gaps in knowledge. Like, I think the biggest wake up call for me starting my sales career was realizing the more you talked, the worse you were at being a sales rep. What they teach you in door to door sales, it's called zombie theory. If you have a handgun with 6 bullets and you're on the third floor of your building and you get in the elevator, like you leave your office room and you shoot 2 zombies right away, and then you get on the elevator and there were 2 zombies in the elevator, so you shoot them, and then you get off the elevator and there's 2 more waiting for you right on the other side of the door, and you're 6 shooter. Now you have no more bullets, and right at the entrance there's another 2 zombies waiting for you there, and they end up getting you. What they teach you in door-to-door sales is ignore those first 2 zombies that are just in the office room. You didn't need to shoot them because they weren't a specific issue for you in that moment. You got to focus on the actual issues that are in your way from getting to the exit. Meaning, do not highlight potential shortcomings of what you are selling. Allow these people to think about what potential shortcomings exist. And then, if they inquire as to whether or not those shortcomings will come to fruition, then you stick to the script and hit them with their overturning objections and yada, yada, yada. So it's all in the name of the less intelligent the person is that you are trying to sell to, the less they know about the things that they are interested in buying right now, the more likely you are to close that deal. So dealing with an uninformed population is the best way in order to close as many deals as possible. Because while some people may be able to think of like, oh, well, wait a minute, if that's the case, then XYZ, then all of a sudden the deal is sank. So, I mean, when you take that principle that anybody in sales will tell you, anyone who's successful in sales, I should say, which, not to brag, but I was, but anyone who is successful in sales will tell you that is a natural way to approach things. And so when P.T. Barnum says there's a sucker born every minute, when people talk about this stuff with Trump, when they play the sound of Trump saying he likes the uneducated much more than the educated, there's a reason why. And it's because educated people, there was nothing worse than like trying to sell a copier and like the person you were selling to actually knew about like all the pieces of copiers. You're just like, oh my God, I already know I'm not coming away with anything in this one here, because you so rarely interacted with somebody that actually knew about what they were buying. Donald Trump does the same philosophy, but it's about politics. It's about leading a country. It's about changing systems that, while a lot of people rightfully so believe they have been left in a lurch, he acts like he is going to be the one that fixes it. And like, just to give an example, I shared a video about this on Friday, but I never really did a segment about it. Donald Trump passed a rule that you no longer have to replace the lead pipes outside of your homes anymore. Now, in my hometown, I actually went through this. If the pipes, the water pipes, need replaced outside of a building, it falls on the individual who owns the home directly outside of those pipes. It is not a government operation. Drinking lead water is bad for you, right? So here's how the duopoly works. Here's how the two-party system works. The Democrats will make small landlords replace those pipes. We're talking about over $30,000 worth of repairs if you're lucky. And the Democratic Party says, well, if you want to own property, you better make sure the water's drinkable because these tenants have enough on their plates. And I would agree. Here's the thing. Most people aren't Jared Kushner. You're listening to a guy that owns one duplex. That does not lend itself to these massive 5-figure tabs that come out of nowhere that are important to be addressed, but are most certainly not addressable by the average American. The Trump administration shows up, and now he's the pro-business landlord, right? Or leader, right? He's the anti-regulation leader. And he shows up and says, you know what? No one has to replace those pipes now. Not that the government's going to do it, but also that the small mom and pop landlords don't have to. And more importantly, the Jared Kushner and hedge fund sized landlords don't have to replace the lead pipes either. So then you find yourself voting between average middle class Americans replace the pipes, or nobody replaces the pipes, and there isn't a candidate that shows up and says, hey, maybe instead of cutting Elon Musk taxes so he can become a trillionaire, maybe we just actually have the government replace all of the pipes nationwide and in a quick and orderly fashion so that we don't have millions of people drinking lead water. And the reason that Donald Trump is able to prey on, as one listener on YouTube highlighted, as Herb highlighted, the suckers that are willing to buy into what he's trying to sell right there. The reason they are willing to buy into what he's selling right there is because there isn't a viable option. We see people going broke trying to replace the lead pipes, or we see people getting sick drinking water from the lead pipes. And those are your two options. And you can pick which one of those two you'd rather take part in. But that's how this sucker born every minute mentality is allowed to proliferate. Just provide an alternative. They're not going to like everything. And it seems like there's about 15% of this country that is seriously just mad about something trans. You can just ignore them. They're too dumb to be in the conversation to begin with. The rest of the people are just looking for actual positive change. Text lines lighten up here a little bit. Kristen says, if you purchased a Trump phone, your kids still aren't going to call. All right, that's mean. That's funny, but that's mean. But I feel you. I feel that. All right, David, I'm going to chance that you sent me something relevant here. Yahoo Finance says Trump Mobile quietly updated its pre-order deposit terms and conditions on April 6th. At the time of writing, the terms and condition read, a pre-order deposit provides only a conditional opportunity if Trump Mobile later elects in its sole discretion to offer the device for sale. A deposit is not a purchase, does not constitute acceptance of an order, does not create a contract for sale, does not transfer ownership or title interest, does not allocate or reserve specific inventory, and does not guarantee that a device will be produced or made available for purchase. This guy is so bleeping disgusting. And here's the problem with it, all right? He's already made himself like $3 billion through like crypto scams and other dumb crap, right? And this board of peace is only going to make him more wealthy. The lawsuits against different government agencies are only going to make him more wealthy. And despite all of that, he got $100 deposits from 600,000 Americans. That's $60 million. He created a fake phone service to grift the people that believe in him most at a time period when he has watched his net wealth increase by billions in just 12 to 16 short months, and yet still needs to take the time to screw people out of another $60 million in times of an affordability crisis. And like, I recognize that those people aren't going to turn around and vote liberal, and watching a bunch of blue MAGAs mocking them for exactly how dumb. And believe you me, if you fell for that, you are dumb. But for mocking people for being as dumb as they are, that's not necessarily going to make them wake up to what happened, right? We talked about this a week or two ago. It's the sunk cost fallacy. It's once you've put a certain amount of money and time into an effort, even when all signs point to you were beat and just lost a bunch of money and time, that feeling almost forces people to dig in even harder. Look it up by yourselves. I studied this in college, the sunk cost fallacy. It's very real, and it's a very real issue. That's why these people are sticking around for this. That's why you put $100 down on a phone that might not even exist after we've watched 15 different other scams kind of proliferate through this administration. And like, as somebody that does this stupid thing where I actually care about the people in the working class, because the working class is what birthed me, I hate watching this happen because I know how desperate these people are, and the fact that they find themselves forcing themselves to cling to whatever semblance of a better future this guy is still pretending to offer shows me just how scared they are, right? It shows me just how nervous they are about the future of for themselves realistically, but for this country in general, and they're willing to buy into this charlatan because they don't see any other options. um Ken says, just simply, you're very on point. Justin and Lenny saying something similar as well here. Um, and Jerry says, I worked in purchasing for a big company. As part of my training, I attended a class intended for salespeople so I would know their tactics. Sending me to that was a great move by my management. Exactly. Oh, yeah. It's crazy. I've closed $1 million deals in my day, and I haven't learned any more than I ever learned at a 100% commission position selling fixed rate energy supplier rates door to door, and what they taught me in terms of impulse selling, how to use what's referred to as GIFs, Jones effect, indifference, fear of loss, and sense of urgency to close a deal. I now can pick out all of those different efforts that different salespeople are making anytime I'm going to buy anything, and it's a huge strength to have in those kind of moments. So I'm right there with you. And I'd highly recommend anybody listening to me that is not sales savvy, take a class, whether it be online or otherwise, because then you realize when you turn on a commercial, when you're listening to the radio, when you're fill in the blank here, you start to realize how advertising and sales kind of work in tandem to get you to make decisions on an impulse rather than really thinking through a lot of decisions. And it only becomes apparent once you know the different methods that people are practicing. I'll be honest with you. It took me the first 2 years from 2018 till 2020. I used to have to practice every single day because one of the keys to impulse selling is to sound indifferent. I realize we're off topic right now, but I think this is important for a lot of people. Um, what they tell salespeople is to sound indifferent about the sale. If you sound energetic or you sound excited about the prospect of closing a deal, that says on a subconscious level to the person you're trying to sell to, wait a minute, why is this person so excited about me signing this paperwork? How big of a commission is he or she going to get? Are they not in this position often? So they start to ask all these questions subconsciously, and excitement kind of drives that line of thinking. Whereas if you're indifferent, it's like, oh, yeah, go ahead and get the paperwork and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. The fact that I sound so disinterested in what I'm talking about means that I do this all the time, that this isn't the first deal I've closed. It's not the last deal I've closed. And this is something that I really don't care if you go through it or not. And I had ingrained over an almost 10-year sales career, I had ingrained the indifferent speech pattern into my vocals so much that it took me years to unlearn the way I used to talk so that you guys wouldn't be bored to tears when I was doing my show. And that's how much it had ingrained in my head that indifference sells. And it's wild when you see it. So when you see someone like, it was always a difference. I did this in 2012, and like it was yesterday, I can snap right back into it. Look, it's on the right side page of your electric bill. Just go get me a copy of it. I'll be able to find it in 10 seconds. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Just go grab your bill. I'll wait right here. Boom. You go back. I show you that what I'm giving you is less than what you're paying. All of a sudden, I got myself a deal. That's Donald Trump in a nutshell, right? That what I'm describing to you is how Donald Trump operates on a nationwide scale. As I've often stated, I am like 10 to 15% Trump. It's just the worst parts of me that I do not like. But I understand how he works and I understand how he operates. And it's why I don't believe that all of his followers are stupid as much as they are desperate, and desperation tends to lead to stupid decisions. It's why when you're broke and living paycheck to paycheck, you might sign up with a guy selling you energy suppliers at your door because you need a solution. And I'll tell you right now, the solution is never going to walk up to your door and knock on it and just give you the solution. So, but desperation brings about questionable behaviors. Same principle politically. The faster people wake up to that, the faster we can kind of move on from it. KG out in Houston says one of my favorite corollaries to Murphy's Law is it is morally wrong to allow suckers to keep their money. No, honestly, I mean, there's a lot of people that think that way. Again, once I began realizing what sales actually was, that's how I ended up in media, because I was like, I am not spending my entire life doing this. Like, I said it either last week or 2 weeks ago. It's a line from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's dupers and dupees. I decided to dedicate this entire show to telling you how dupers on both sides of the political aisle talk, so that you know when they're feeding you a line of BS. Whether or not it was worth it or not, I'll point you to my angry emails and allow you to decide. Brian says, laughing his rear end off. Just think of the dollars skimmed off of defense, building contracts, land deals, kickbacks for opening up public lands for oil, gas, minerals. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Connie's asking if I'll come with her next time she's buying a car. Let me know. Let me know what time you're going. We'll see if we can look into that. And Cynthia says, don't forget the market was gamed. 920 million worth of crude oil shorts were taken 70 minutes before an Axios report claimed the U.S. and Iran were near a 14-point deal. Absolutely. I've been sitting on that story for like 6 or 7 shows at this point. I just never get into it because I go on side tangents about the importance of how sales impacts us in the political world, or careers in the sales department impact us in the political world. But you're exactly right. That's just another scam. I'm not sure that it's directly impacting Trump, but I think it's impacting his entire circle. At least Hunter Biden wasn't involved, though, Cynthia. We got to keep our eyes on the prize here. I'll tell you what, short break here. We'll have one more segment this hour before we get into the 10 o'clock hour. We'll at least lay the groundwork for this Virginia gerrymandering conversation. And then we'll jump into it in a more in-depth fashion in the 10 o'clock hour here as well. So everybody stay right where you are, and we'll keep this rolling. 920-281-1150 for anybody that wants to take part. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. All right, we're back. Ben Gomino's Outside the Box, WHBY. By the way, if you didn't get a chance to listen to Friday's show, we did have Francesca Hong, gubernatorial candidate on the Democratic side, running for office. I'm currently in touch with Mandela Barnes and Kelda Royce's people. If they're not on this week, they'll be on early next week, and we're just going to keep knocking them out as time goes on here. We're up to 249 subscribers on the YouTube page. Looking for one more person to subscribe to be that 250, and then the rest of you as well. But next person to do it, you don't get a prize or anything, but you just help a brother out here. So if you guys are Facebook people, you enjoy you enjoy this show, maybe you'd want to watch it every now and again. It does go, I stream it live and then I leave the episodes up there, and I have just started learning how to use the video editing software through YouTube as well, so we might get some of those dead spaces out too. But don't hold me to that. This job's a lot. All right, let's see here. Steve says, I'm excited where this goes, just based on how you're starting this. How about the movie Used Cars? Okay, you know what? I thought you meant just the movie Cars, like the cartoon. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with Cars, but I'm going to keep reading. With Kurt Russell. Kurt's character is Mr. President. The gullible public is the family that eats up the sales crap and leaves the station wagon they don't need. FYI, I worked in sales. The entire movie was used in our training. Oh, don't even get me started. If I stopped talking about politics today, I think I could do an entire second 2-hour show on just sales and marketing and the tactics that are used to kind of get us, as one listener kind of highlighted, and as I've highlighted, because people always say if we raise taxes on billionaires, they would leave the country. And I said there's a very simple solution to that. America's really not number one in most things anymore. We refer to ourselves as number one. We chant number one a lot, but we really aren't. One of the things we are number one in, though, is buying useless crap that we don't need. We are incredibly good at that. And if people threaten to take their money or property out of the country, I would say, A, we should tax them the heckin' back on their way out of their country and say, oh, and by the way, have fun selling to these countries where, like, people have to like pay their taxes into healthcare and public transportation and a bunch of other good stuff, because you're not going to be selling here in America anymore. Let's see how much they're in a rush to leave after that. As Anna says, let them leave. Their assets and profits are still here. Exactly. I'm saying, one TikToker asking, should we occupy Wall Street again? I'll tell you, I was part of the original protest back in 2012. Not like on Wall Street. I was in Philadelphia doing it, but the principle still holds. You can sign me up for it. Just example 5,485 of leftists kind of being ahead of the game here. I'm sure you guys probably predicted this, but we're going to have to wait until the next hour to get into gerrymandering. But I promise this will be happening on the other side of the news. This is why we have to have a real conversation about this. If we are going to gerrymander the entire country for both the red team and the blue team, there need to be some ideas to back it up. Look at what's going on in Virginia right now. I have a whole heck of a lot more thoughts about it, and I hope you guys will chime in as well. 920-281-1150. We will jump into this on the other side of the break. If you can't be here for that, we stream the show on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. You can check it out there. And, of course, you can download the WHBY app and take the audio with you anywhere you go. We'll be back on the other side of the news. You know, you come in here and I'm watching my YouTube or my TikTok chat blow up, and it's a bunch of people saying, "Ah, still have that great voice," and I'm sitting there like, "Ah, thank you. I try really hard." And then, sure enough, it's not because I'm talking at all. I'm sitting here quietly. I guess. Apparently, I'm chopped liver now, and here it is, Landon Moore, Captain Crispy, freaking taking all the attention from 10:04 to 10:06. Thank you very much, Landon. Here's Hooper. All right, we're back. Ben Comino's WHBY Political Voices Network. You got Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. If you're just joining us, we spent the first hour talking about my experiences with the Wisconsin Labor History Society and the importance of unions in general. We jumped into this story about Trump phones, not from a corruption standpoint, but just from a how. How is this allowed to be a thing standpoint? And then we kind of wrapped up the conversation talking about how the basic principles of sales kind of tie into a Trump presidency, and then how to just keep an eye out for these kind of things in general when you are buying stuff. Um, this is that was a solid first hour. However, I have been kind of ramping up into talking about this Virginia gerrymandering conversation because I have a bunch of important thoughts about this, because it goes to show you um some major problems that persist in our elective politics that I think get ignored half the time. And allow me to explain what I mean here, because I am not a sucker. And I feel like this is the 8,000th time that but I recognize that different people are listening at different times of the day. And it's impossible to have this conversation without having all of the facts when you are having it. Both sides gerrymander. I personally hate the practice because whether you are in a liberal or conservative gerrymandered state, district, county, whatever the situation may be, I can probably find you politicians that are not doing their jobs the appropriate way. As people are already messaging, neither side should be doing it. And I'm right there with you. I think neither side should be doing it. And I think it is also important to highlight that depending on which metric you are using, which source, I should say, that you are using to have this conversation, Republicans have the advantage nationwide, and it is anywhere between 2 and 16 seats to the right. So, the argument could be made that any mild efforts at liberal gerrymandering could be seen as efforts to skew the scales back towards even, but obviously the ideal outcome would be nobody taking part in the system. It also is important to say that when Democrats had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they all voted for legislation that would make the act of gerrymandering illegal, but they needed 60 votes in the Senate. Much like with the SAVE Act and conservatives today, liberals refused to eliminate the filibuster, and as a result, it did not get pushed through. And so we've been embroiled in this tit-for-tat effort to kind of out gerrymander one another. And now we are seeing the inevitable outcome of that go full circle, because it goes from Republicans crying us all a river that Virginia and California are gerrymandering to the entire American South essentially rewriting the 1965 Voting Rights Act that ensured that black people's voices would be recognized in the name of, giant quote fingers here, ungerrymandering those states, only to turn around and then cheer that justice was served, that Virginia is now, according to their Supreme Court, not going to be allowed to gerrymander, despite the fact that it was actually talk about this in a meaningful way with real stakes and not playing politics that allows it to remain consistent. Now, I am just barely scratching the surface for what I want to say about this, but we've got our first call, and I welcome anybody else to chime in as well. 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. I've also I have a message saying it doesn't need to be even, that I definitely want to address. We're going to do the caller first, though. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben. Brian in Fremont. Hey, this is the one that is super exciting to me for a variety of reasons, and I just want to try to run it through with you. I'm trying to understand the reasoning for the extreme gerrymandering, and the House and the Senate have done little. They have been invaluable. They've been invaluable in shielding the administration, but otherwise they haven't really stepped out and done anything other than just obstruct. I feel like this is the ultimate football term, Hail Mary, to keep power. And the reasoning being is that if 35% of the voting Americans are Trump supporters, so base Republicans, and when you're in the Deep South, you're looking at 60%, 70%, 80% of Republicans, how scared are they to keep power in November? I mean, and what guarantees that after they do all the gerrymandering that they're still going to get the votes they want? There's been big changes in votes all across the United States. So I don't know whether this is like the big Hail Mary, because once November rolls around, they lose power. They lose the ability to shield, and we become at least a stalemate where we don't have to wake up with this pit in our stomach every morning trying to figure out what happened. I guess that's my look at it.
I'd even take it a step further there, Brian, because what people ignore with gerrymandering is it doesn't make super safe districts. What it does is kind of slices the pie as thin as possible to give as many conservative seats as possible. Here's what's interesting, Brian, and why I am not pulling the panic cord, even though it seems pretty clear, and I'm right there with you. This is an effort by the GOP because all signs point to an absolute drubbing in November to kind of minimize those losses to the best of their ability. Well, what sticks out to me, though, is, Brian, is that if you look at these off-year elections, if you look at what just took place in Wisconsin a little bit ago, you have all these districts that are taking some places that were like 60-40 Dem and trying to make it 50.5 Republican, 49.5 Dem. But in a time when you're watching 18 to 24 point swings in districts towards Democrats because this presidency is so uniquely bad at what they are doing. So, like, you can try and reorganize these seats on the Titanic or put lipstick on this pig, whatever turn of phrase you want to use here. I'm not saying it should be ignored, and it is very shady that this is taking place in general, and the nonstop efforts that specifically the GOP are engaging in nationwide to kind of maximize this to the best of their ability. But I wouldn't be surprised if it turns around and bites them when it's all said and done.
Exactly. I guess that's the beauty of it. They can't depend on any voters anymore. They can't depend on the 18 to 25s. They can't depend on Hispanics. They can't depend on blacks. They can't depend on anything because of what they've done over the past year and a half or in the past. I think this is going to be an all-out loss, and then they're going to stand around and then the real politics begins, because then we're going to be back to slinging mud and nothing getting done. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I appreciate the call. And yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, hell, I remember that's why when you guys met me in January of 23, when the Democrats lost the House, I basically started in January of 23 saying if the Democratic plan is to tell you that the economy is working for the next 2 years, that's going to go terribly for them in November of 24. Sure enough, I was right. And the reason that I was saying that is because I knew that the Republican House wasn't going to vote for anything. It doesn't matter how popular it actually was or wasn't what was being proposed. Nothing was ever going to get across the finish line. And Allie, I'm going to give you some time to delete that comment since you're listening from my home state. But yes, Hail Mary is a football term, and it's one used very regularly. You're killing me right now. But I appreciate that call from Brian nevertheless. And I think that's what's so frustrating about all this, because I'll be the first one to tell you, look at Illinois, look at California, look at New York, places where liberals are not afraid to lose is not good. That's not a good outcome. And it most certainly isn't a good outcome in the Alabamas, the Arkansas, the Mississippis. I'd argue those states are oftentimes find themselves on the lowest part of the pyramid in regards to education and salary and life expectancy and all these other statistics. So I'm right there. I think this will end up being a fail, but it's watching this tennis style back and forth whiplash break out about the act of gerrymandering, because when Virginia did it, it was an egregious affront, even though they held it to a vote and allowed their voters to decide to do it. So then the Supreme Court rips away a law from 1965 talking about black people being represented in Congress and blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, that's okay. That's par for the course. And now the Virginia Supreme Court is taking away what the voters selected to do. So somebody explained to me why Virginia voting to do this, having it pass, and then engaging in it is illegal. But what is going on in Florida and Texas and Louisiana is actually above board. When does this eventually start to, does the embarrassment actually kick in for anybody not remaining consistent on the matter? Because that's why I love taking the approach that I do. At no point have we been championing this. I think it is bad that it is happening everywhere, and there should be a nationwide ban on this practice, and we should be using the computers. What is it exactly that we are waiting for on this front? Why is it that the states that aren't even holding it to a vote are above board? And I think what's pissing me off about this the most is that I'm seeing the statistics of how the United States Supreme Court rules in favor of presidential powers when there's a Democrat in office versus a Republican, because it lends itself to the rotating villain conversation that I can't stand so much. Joe Biden tries to institute student loan forgiveness. Well, that's not above board. And the Supreme Court's going to strike that down because that addresses the working class. Why would we allow that to get across the finish line? But just about anything Trump has tried to accomplish has gotten across the finish line with this Supreme Court. Like, there comes a time when the systems in place cannot so obviously be bastardized in one team's direction. And most certainly, if they are going to be aimed in one direction, they do not get to be the ones that cry about how far left this country is going, because you're going to get laughed off of this, out of this studio, if that's the message that you're going to try and run with right here. Because it should be about the policy, and Republicans ain't got any. And so that's why they're nervous about this. They got something trans. And wouldn't it be better if Elon Musk had all the money? And that's their entire platform in 2026. Yes, I would want to be gerrymandering too if I were them, because something tells me that's not going to be pretty, even with all of these gerrymandering efforts that are going on. But don't sit there and pee down my leg and tell me it's raining when it comes to gerrymandering. As I said to start this conversation off, because one person said fairness is not a question here. You're absolutely right. We're not a 50-50 country. It's not supposed to be fair in the terms that it is even. I am saying that in what is classically defined as a gerrymandered district, depending on the study that you use, it skews between 2 and 16 seats to the right, depending on what you look at. So no matter what it is, gerrymandering either provides a slight or major benefit to the Republicans. No debate. No room for debate on this one here. And then it is a matter of how big that advantage is and how much Democrats are trying to nibble at that. And if the Republicans would like to join the Democrats in the effort to ban this practice nationwide, all they have to do is say yes. Waka Waka MAGA. 920-281-1150. 920-281-1150. DSL says, what's more amazing is that Virginia state lawyers told the state they missed the deadline and proper procedures, and they pushed forward anyway and wasted $70 million in taxpayer money for an inevitable outcome. That's where the outrage should be. Or the outrage should be DSL and why other states don't even have to go about it politically. They're just doing it. And it seems like their Supreme Courts don't have any issue at all, right? So, like, we can try and get bogged down in semantics and, like, as I call it in the house that I grew up, white people BS. But the fact of the matter is, it's weird how that white people BS always seems to be skewing towards the one political party that just keeps trying to cut taxes, gut social programs, and do nothing beneficial other than waka waka trans. Like, there comes time when I'm clearly hitting a boiling point where this administration has to do something, anything at all that could be misconstrued as positive for the working class. And I welcome the administration doing that. That, boy, howdy, would that be a pleasant change of pace compared to how this administration has been governing for the last 20 months. I'm just not holding my breath that we're going to get it in the next 6 months either. Maybe I'll be wrong. I absolutely doubt it. 920-281-1150. 920-281-1150. I'm happy to keep this conversation rolling, obviously. If not, I do want to focus on a little bit more about this concept, about this country moving right on issues versus not. And then conversely, marrying that to a post that I put on my social media platforms early this morning surrounding the birth rate. And I think I have a little bit to say about this as a 30-something, pushing 40-something, let's not talk about it, that has not started a family yet by choice. There's a lot of people in my life who have not started a family, and it's not because of their choice, I should say. And birth rates are collapsing in this country. Let's talk about that in a real way, not the way one Nazi saluting Jag likes to talk about it with his ulterior motives. And if you don't know what I mean, stay tuned, and we'll be jumping into that in just a couple minutes. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos right here on WHBY. Well, hello. I've returned. It's Outside the Box with Ben Cominos. Um, this one should be an interesting one. We got some pot calling the kettle black kind of energy going on right now, and I'm here for it. Um, um, Childbirths in this country are trending in the eyes of a lot of people the wrong direction. The idea of family life has been an unachievable reality for a lot of people, and other people, whether through freedom to make their own choices or a differing attitude towards what best suits them and their prospects in life, have decided that they are not having kids. And I would include myself among them. I oftentimes joke with you guys, but a lot of truth is said in jest. That Outside the Box would be a worse show if I were a parent, because the amount of time, hell, now that I have this evening TikTok show that I do, soon to be on YouTube as well, hopefully by the end of the month, absolute impossibility if I were also 50% responsible for rearing a child with my partner, right? And it's about the decisions that you make in life. And as long as those decisions are made with the best information as well as access to resources, well, there's only so much that you can really do about it beyond that. That's the best that you can hope for. Here's the thing. There has been a fairly obvious push, and if you're on social media, you've probably seen it. There is a very large push coming from some of the most powerful people on the planet surrounding the concept of the family unit and making sure that we have a workforce that is capable and able to replace the existing workforce as they are slowly retiring. That being, of course, the baby boomers. All data points to no. And if you haven't seen the chart that I shared on my Facebook page, it's in full blown collapse from over 2 children per family, 2.1 children to be specific, just when the housing market collapsed. We'll just use that time frame as a reason and no other reason in particular, plummeting all the way to 1.6 children, a whole half a child less over the course of the last 15 years per average across all families. Now, some of this is good news in that, and I played the audio for you. Some of this is good news that teenage pregnancies are at all-time lows. 16-year-olds are now are making good choices, and a lot of the sexual education programs that a certain population of people have seemed to be demonizing over the course of my entire life and even beyond, realistically, seem to be paying dividends. And especially in this version of America, having a child at 16 years old is basically a sentence to run on an economic treadmill for the rest of your life. And you can get mad at me about that. I don't care. It is the reality of the situation. I'm not going to say there is no example of somebody in this economy having an unexpected childbirth that experts are saying you need to make $250,000 a year in order to adequately raise. Not to say that you can't be making $15 an hour and find yourself on the better side of that coin, but I'm here to say that it is not in your likelihood, and that the odds of you making the NFL are probably just about as high as making that kind of accomplishment in this economy. Trying to find childcare plans as you try and make enough money as you are starting your life. Trying to pay off hospital visits, assuming you do not have access to healthcare, because we're one of those great nations that ties healthcare access to employment for most people. Fill in the list. There are plenty of reasons why young people are no longer having children. And like, as one of my listeners highlights, Fox News does not think that's a good idea. And yes, I've seen the audio clip. And yes, you're right. It's kind of embarrassing. It's like they need teenagers to have children and be stuck in a situation in order to fill a lot of the jobs that people claim are explicitly for teenagers, right? But they need to trap you in them, showing up day in and day out. And without the children, you are now seeing less people find themselves stuck in those kind of positions. But then you get the Elon Musks coming out of the woodwork, the Peter Thiels, and I'm here to tell you right now that the worries that they have in regards to population replacement are twofold. One, they want to make sure that they have the next feudalist society ready to come and work at their Teslas and Palantirs in all of these different places for poverty wages, so that they can continue living high on the hog while we wait for technology to replace all of these workers anyway. But more importantly, we got to make sure we got a strong white nation. And a lot of these people who aren't having children are the mighty whites that aren't interested, that are interested in having kids, therefore setting up whites to be a minority as time goes on in this nation. And while we just can't abide by that, because then how are we going to do all the stupid Trump stuff if there's less white people in this nation? So they want the cheap labor and they want their mighty white nation. And that's the way that they are talking about this. And they will thrust United States fertility rate statistics in your face with reckless abandon. It's trying to peer pressure, as people are now messaging me saying 49 child free by choice and loving it. And like, right on. I absolutely love that. There's plenty of people. I'm 38, child free, love my life. Love my life every single day. Everybody's allowed to experience life through the lens that they see fit. If we are going to act like we are actually having an employment crisis, though, which depending on how much AI actually is able to take off of our plates in a decade, could very well be a situation that we are faced with right now, then there need to be the resources and programs in place that encourage child rearing. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not quitting my job to raise a child. I would never expect any hypothetical woman that I married who had a career and life goals to quit her job. If that were her end game, right on. But cold day in hell that I would ever force her into that position. So now it's a matter of childcare. Well, childcare is basically the cost of a second mortgage at this point. So are you going to take on that call or take on that price, or are you going to give up your dreams? If this is a choice made by a family, these are the kind of difficult choices that we have to make every single day. If our government and the oligarchy and the most powerful elected officials, and for the record, this is a cause being championed by right wingers at this point. Watch Fox News, watch right wing media, watch the politicians that go on Tucker Carlson. The idea that there's not enough families out there right now is a concern for a lot of people. Great. If you mean business and that's actually high up on your list, right on. Who am I to judge you for the way that you're talking about this kind of stuff? If you're not willing to vote for a society that makes the act of having children a more affordable prospect, you do not then get to turn around and say, why aren't people having more children? Hey, I just gutted this bill that was going to provide free breakfast and lunch for all children that were attending this particular school district. And I also gutted any type of legislation that might have accidentally made childcare more affordable. Oh, and also I'm voting to force the 10 Commandments on in schools, but also something trans. Why aren't you having kids? Oh, I don't know. I'll give you 3 guesses as to why it's not actually happening. And to the OG listeners, you probably remember me saying this. When it comes to climate change, I obviously think it's getting warmer around the planet. Like, I think there's a lot of evidence highlighting the very obvious outcome that like 97% of scientists point you to. But I am not going to live in a society where billionaires are flying their private jets around and I'm drinking out of a paper straw. So like, either we're going to take it seriously or we're not. And I'm fine with either one of those options, because as a non-parent, in like 50 years at most, I'm gone. And then whatever happens to this planet on the other side of that is the next generation's problem. For those of you with children and grandchildren, you got a little more skin in the game here, and you want to make sure that this planet is still livable and workable for a lot of people. That's another concern. There are people out there that take the climate stuff very, very seriously and are very nervous about it. And if that's the case, and you're considering having kids, and you see the trajectory that we are on with the sitting president of the United States saying, you know what? No one's got to replace the lead pipes anymore. Just don't worry about it. Is that the kind of society you're bringing your children up in? that's probably a cause for concern. Like, all of these issues are weighing in on these factors. And then you have an entire army of people coming forward, much of which do not have children, by the way, and blame feminism for that, because of course they blame feminism for it. All coming forward saying it's time, you guys need to have kids. It's time to stop being so selfish. You can't do all these things and do what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. Make it more conducive to have a child. Look at all of the countries that I talk about in Scandinavia. The second you have a child, first of all, the entire process is free. Secondly, you have a baby box. So the second your child is born, every single person, regardless of means, is given the same materials that act as a crib and act as toys for the child, and gives you all of these different things that in America, either you can afford them or you can't, or we throw parties where your friends show up and give you all the stuff in case you wouldn't be able to afford it. And the craziest part about all of this, and I kind of intimated it to start it up, is that the plummet in childbirth rates very obviously started. Like, you see it shoot up in 1980, and then it kind of hovers around the same point for about 35 years, and then in 2008 begins to free fall. And it free falls from 2008 until 2020, where there is a huge uptick, almost a full tenth of a child per family in 2021. Do you know why? A, we were able to stay home and not do anything, so people were passing time in a very obvious way. But more importantly, because the government was providing the conducive measures to be able to have a child. But since 2008, as one moron says in my text line, the Obama years, yes, Obama inheriting the Bush collapse absolutely is what I am getting at here. It is the housing collapse of 2008, and then the lack of any intentionality to address the fleecing of the American population. Instead, people were losing houses and jobs and livelihoods, or people's parents were going through that, and then the young people had to chip in to keep the entire family afloat. Do you know what that does not lend itself to? Having children. Having children does not happen when you do not have a government that takes wealth consolidation seriously, that does not take hedge funds buying up all of these different childcare companies and all of these different facilities and not paying enough to have that child or doing anything like that. There's a very obvious line of delineation of when child birthing rates plummeted. And if you really want to put the tinfoil hat on, there's a chance that that is what is by design. That this whole economic system was put in place because a bunch of people were having kids too frequently and people were nervous about it. There is a chance that that could be the case, but there is no wiggle room. The children stopped being born starting in 2008. And it wasn't overnight. And it's not like it plummeted over the course of 1 or 2 years. It was a 12-year process that never rectified, that never got better. And it is always the money. And the fact that we did not have a serious politician or political party willing to crack down on that in a meaningful way. And now the shaming is beginning for people that don't want to have kids. Then they do have kids and are looking for social programs, and then they are called welfare queens. And there comes a time when you just have to look at the obvious problems in society that have even more obvious solutions and then figure it out. But if you're going to sit there and shame people because the whites aren't having enough white boy babies, well, Elon, it's time to chip into a child care program or pipe down. Speaking of which, isn't that guy like this is what happens when you get these African immigrants? You know what I mean? Elon's running around with all these baby mamas, doesn't show up in the child's life. It's weird. You don't see people saying that about him. I can't figure out why they don't say it about him, but they say it about a bunch of other people. That is strange. Definitely is strange. But I wanted to jump into that because it's so obvious. And I implore anybody listening to me that has any social media whatsoever, go on my social media pages and go look at the chart. There is no mistaking exactly why people stopped giving birth to children. And if you truly believe that that will be an economic detriment, that there will be no bouncing back from that, you tell me what the solution is if it isn't the obvious people cannot afford to have children right now. You tell me. 920-281-1150. We're going to squeeze one more quick break in here and we'll put a wrap on the show here for the Monday edition. Didn't think we were going to make it, but I think we just might. We'll jump into it here in just a little bit, guys. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. You know what's better than Googling a plumber and hoping for the best? Checking the reviews and seeing your neighbors already trust and love them. Roush Plumbing has the Google reviews to back it up. Fox Valley homeowners are raving about the fast, friendly, reliable service. And here's something you don't see every day: a free text line to a real plumber. Got a question before you schedule? Text it. Sometimes that's all you need. And with spring rains coming, don't wait to make sure your sump pump is ready. Call or text Roush Plumbing, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. Find that free text line at roushplumbing.com. Larry's in my chat talking about the money drop off after each recession, and it's a very real issue. We even saw it happen post COVID. Every single emergency, ultimately, especially in a post Reagan America, every single emergency results in a fairly decent sized cash transfer every single time that never ends up getting addressed. And then because it's not addressed, the new starting point changes. It's almost like there's an unacceptable status quo that one party defends, then the other party puts us in an even worse position, and then the new party shows up and says, well, this is the new normal, you better get used to this, otherwise people will get you go from there, right? That's just me, of course. But what does Todd say here? Calling your listeners. Oh, I'm so sorry about your delicate feelings, Todd. Waka waka, whichever MAGA you are. I'm sure you'll be okay. But I mean, you fill in the blank here of what it is. It's a matter of maintaining a status quo that is just flat out not acceptable. And now we're seeing it impact people's decisions to have children. Absolutely remarkable to me. Now, I say all of this to say, I don't have any answers outside of, if you are concerned about this, which cannot stress enough, I am not. If you are concerned about this, then you have to take the actual causes of the problem seriously. And no, it's not a matter of feminism. It's not a matter of the cell phones, as Ben Sass, who very unfortunately was terminally diagnosed with an ailment, who's now going around saying it's his job to get his important thoughts out there in the limited time that he has on Earth. I can absolutely respect that attitude and that sentiment. And he has decided to use his final moments to go on a national tour and tell people that cell phones are the reason why people aren't having children anymore. I have a new follower on my TikTok page who was able to rattle off, just off the top of their heads, the economy, climate, school safety. Top 3 reasons for why they're not interested in having a child right now. I don't know if that's a man or a woman. I haven't actually looked at their account yet. And the information's kind of coming at me kind of quick there, but that's irrelevant for the conversation, because those are 3 very real issues that people have in mind. And this is how you actually have these kind of conversations. But instead, we'd rather boil these kind of dialogues down to very simple talking points. She's a 48-year-old female. I appreciate that. We boil these down to talking points, trying to score cheap points, trying to push our agenda across the finish line, rather than A, looking at the data, and B, taking seriously in any kind of meaningful way how to address it. If your solution to the child care or the child rearing problem doesn't have anything to do with affordable food, aka SNAP benefits, and affordable child care, aka universal child care, for the American population, then you better damn well have a pretty solid private solution to what this issue is. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to address this. So if you are serious, if this is actually a problem to you, all right, fine. Well, then let's get serious. And if you are just trying to score political points, or more importantly, are trying to guilt people into trapping themselves into a never-ending debt treadmill just because you're worried about how you're going to find employees later in life, then just say that and be honest. I recognize that's not the popular attitude. That's not a good agenda. But no crap. That's why you won't say it out loud. Say the real things, because we all know, and I can't stress enough, the chart is available on all of my socials. Go check it out. It is so obvious when we decided to stop having children. And it is so obvious that the driving force behind it is economics. And yes, the climate matters. And yes, the prevalence of school shooting matters. And yes, the general trajectory that America is on matters. But fundamentally, we look at what is right in front of our face when we are making these decisions. And what is right in front of our face right now is, are we even able to afford ourselves in 2026, let alone bring another life onto this planet? And if the answer to that question is, I don't know, Well, that's a much bigger problem than I think a lot of people are willing to admit, especially the guy who is bragging about becoming a trillionaire later this year while receiving government welfare to keep his businesses afloat and is telling everybody else that they just need to work hard like him. If that's the person you're using for this conversation, you may have lost the thread. Don't allow me to tell you that, though, although be careful. That Nazi saluting jag is wrong 2 out of 3 times here. With that, guys, I think we're going to call it a show. I have not checked. If I leave here and I have not hit 250 subscribers on YouTube, I'm canceling the show tomorrow. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, my TikTok page and Facebook page as well. It's becoming much more active. Of course, I am also doing this program on WHBY airwaves, and we have an app. All you have to do is search WHBY in Google Play or in the App Store. It's free, easy to use, allows you to take the audio of the show on the road for you, and that audio is carried anywhere you get your podcast. You can check Outside the Box out on Spotify, Apple Music, fill in the blanks. Anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can check out the program. And of course, it's simulcast at 1 on Political Voices Network. I feel like I need 5 minutes to talk about all this dumb stuff I do outside of this show now. And of course, I have an evening show from 7 to 8 on TikTok as well. It will be available on other sources down the line. I am told I have to do this 4 more times before I'm allowed to call it a week. So we will be back tomorrow with another program, and Haley Tenpass is up next with Focus Fox Valley. We'll talk to you guys then. Thanks for listening.